One of the things that's been bothering me a little bit lately is I've noticed that the right-hand side front wheel has got a significant amount of camber in it, tilting in at the top, so that would be negative camber. If I go to the other side, the wheel is much more vertical, and I'm trying to figure out why that is. And in the process, and I've also noticed there's the inside tire is wearing more than the outside. Then I remembered when I got the car, it had the original drum brakes on it. I replaced the drum brakes with disc brakes, and in the process, I replaced the full front suspension with the A-arms, kingpins, knuckles, everything. And it got me thinking, what if there was anything different? I went back and looked at a couple of my older videos, and I'll put a link to that one up in the top corner. When I pulled the damper off on this side, it had a couple of shims underneath it, tilting it up this way, which would pull the top of the spindle in. And to give you a better idea of that, I'm going to pop the hubcap off and just put a T-square up against there. So I'll pop this off. Yeah, that's the hubcap off. I'll grab my carpenter square and set that up here. I'm surprised that stood up there. We'll try and get down a little closer here. With that being square there, you can see the front wheel tilts in significantly. And if I do the same on the other side, you can see that the wheel is a lot more vertical. So I'm going to pop the hood and show you where those shims are. All right, we'll come around to here. Now our 3 bolts holding on the damper to the car. There's these 2 here and here, and there's one down by my finger there. And there's shims underneath these 2 bolts. So what those shims will do, or have done, is tilted the whole damper up this way, which would pull the top of the arm inwards, and therefore, tilt the top of the wheel in. So I'll loosen these 3 bolts, pull out those shims, and theoretically that should drop that back down and push the top of the lever arm out and push the top of the spindle over and bring the front wheel closer to vertical. So to make access a little bit easier, I'm just going to pull out the duct here and get that out of the way, and that'll give me better access for the ratchet and what have you to loosen those bolts on the damper. I've got that duct out of the way now, and gives me much better access to the top of the damper. So I need to loosen these 2 bolts off. The shims are underneath those 2 bolts, and I'll loosen this one off just to give me some wiggle room. Well, here are the 2 shims that were underneath the front of the damper, and you can see they're quite thick. Now I have to retighten these up. We'll see how much of effect it's had on the wheel, because it'll drop that down quite a bit. I've tightened up the 3 bolts so that the damper is sitting tight and flush to the frame there, and just looking at this quick, it does look a lot better. So what I'm going to do is I'll straighten out the wheel, put the square up against it, and see if we've made a difference. And I would have to say that's made a huge improvement. Now you may be wondering, why on earth would they put those shims in there in the first place? Well, my theory is perhaps with the original suspension something got bent. That was the way to repair things. So by replacing the entire front suspension, lower A-arms, spindles, everything, I've removed that bend, and now this is going back to the correct camber. Now the next thing I'm going to check is if that's had any effect on the toe in or toe out, and then I will make any necessary adjustments with that. before I get started on the toe-in adjustment, I just remembered that there's also a shim underneath the one end of the damper on the driver's side as well. I don't know if you can see it down there. So it's underneath that. Oh, there you can see it. So I'm just going to repeat the process on this side, take that shim out, and go from there. Now that I've got that shim removed on the other side, I can get to setting the toe in. Now, before I go any further, I'll just do a quick explanation of what that means. So I have the back of the car here, and then the front, and with toe in, the leading edge of the tires are closer to the center line of the car than the trailing edge. And that number, according to the manual, you can see the setup here, is toe in of 1.6 millimeters to 3 millimeters. There are several ways of determining how to do that, and one of the ways, and the most economical, is using what's called the string method. You could also take it to a shop, or you can purchase what they call toe plates, and but I've chosen to go this, and continuing with the Econo part of Econobox. So there's a string down each side, and it's parallel to the car. And how I figured that out is, going back to my little diagram here, the blue lines represent the strings. The front back edges of the rim to that line, and that is equal. So by making sure those dimensions stay level, I can make sure that the string is parallel to the car, and I check that regularly as I'm going along. So that's what I've done here. I've measured from this edge and that edge of the wheel to the string, and those are pretty much bang on. So now I can go to the front and measure from the leading edge of the wheel to the trailing edge of the wheel to that string and figure out the difference. So that 1.6 to 3 millimeter toe in is the difference between this measurement here and this one here, which means on each wheel it has to be between 0.8 of a millimeter and 1.5 difference on each side. So how do I go about adjusting that? I've already measured on the left-hand side of the car. The front of the wheel here, it's 8.761, and at the back it's 89.89. So I actually have 2.28 toe in. Actually, that's not right. Oh no, pardon me, toe out. So the back edge of the wheel is further away from the string than the front edge, which means the wheel is tilted out this way. So one precaution I want to take while doing this work is to make sure that the steering doesn't move while I'm making adjustments on the tie rod ends. So I've put a hefty piece of tape around both the steering wheel and the finishing cone here. So that will hold the steering firmly in place while I adjust the tie rod ends. Now, to actually adjust the length of the tie rods, I've loosened this lock nut here, or jam nut, that secures the tie rod itself to the tie rod end. I've loosened off this little clamp here so the boot will be able to spin. And as I mentioned with these numbers here, I have 2.28 millimeters toe out. So I basically need to shorten the tie rod in order to bring the front edge of the wheel inwards. So I'm going to do this at about half a turn at a time. So I'll be threading this tie rod in to the tie rod end. So the key is, I think, to do a little bit at a time and take my time to do that. All right, so I've got my 9/16 wrench, and I'm going to turn this in. And just turn the, oops. All right, so that's half a turn. I'm just going to make sure the steering wheel hasn't moved. Nope. And let's measure. I'm just going to zero this up. Now, this probably isn't the most precise way of doing it. But so that I have a reading of 87.81. So it's moved a little bit. That's at the front. That's probably not enough. And a bit further back. Yeah, I'll just wait for that string to stop moving. And that's 89.1. So that's improved things a little bit, but we're not quite there. So I'm going to do another half turn on the tie rod end. All right, now I have 88.62 at the front, 87.4 at the back, which is a toe in of 1.2 millimeters. So I'm just going to turn the tie rod a little bit back out again. So now I'm going to lock down this lock nut here, and then I will double check this and double check that my steering wheel hasn't moved. Damn it, just under a millimeter toe in on this side. I've got the lock nut jammed tight, and I've got the clamp retightened. Now that's done, I can do the other side. With both sides done now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the car backwards and forwards a little bit, double check that I'm still parallel, and then double check my numbers on the front here. But just eyeballing it, it looks really good. I am going to call this a success. I've rolled the car back and forth, double checked my parallels, and I have a total of 2 millimeters toe in. So as you can see, the manual calls for 1.6 to 3 millimeters. I'm going to call that job done. So now it's all time to put the hubcaps back on, clean up the tools and such, put the bonnet back down, and take it out for a spin. But that's going to have to wait because it's raining quite heavily right now. Well, that wraps up another video. Thanks for joining me. I'll keep an eye on that tire wear to see if I've cured the issue, and we'll report back at a later date. In the meantime, if you like the video, please be sure to share it with your friends. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment below, or send me an email at the address I've got in the description below. If you missed the last episode, I'll put a link up to that one in the top corner. And if you'd like to see where this whole Bugeye project started, I'll put a link to that video down in the bottom corner. So my name is Ian. This is the Econobox Garage. We'll see you next time.